All right, so we're back here on. I guess we could consider this the final episode of the Washington Football Guys as we transition to a new name,
Yep.
which we'll talk about that a little bit later in the show. So I guess this is somewhat of a bittersweet. Where we got a canon name because obviously we're now the Commanders, so we definitely have to have, I think, a name that is kind of indicative of this team. So
Yeah.
what's going on, Rob?
I've had a few days to think about this draft class and kind of
Yeah.
reflect, especially the first day. That first night was a little rough.
Yeah.
For those of you that didn't see, do not drink and draft, people. I highly recommend do not drink and draft. But I've had time to reflect. I've done a little bit more research into some of our picks, and I feel differently about some. I feel the same about others.
Yeah.
But ultimately, we just got to see what happens with these how these picks pan out the next couple of years.
Yeah. This draft was interesting, and I actually had the opportunity to actually go on a podcast earlier today and talk about our draft. The beauty thing about our draft was the situation of being able to fill the needs that we were looking for prior to the draft, and actually attaining some draft capital and getting multiple, third and a fourth round pick that ended up turning out to be some great dividends for this team going forward. So I look at that as a plus. This wasn't, like I said, like the the when it comes, especially when it comes to drafts, there's a lot of situations where we always look for the sexy pick. We always look for the ones who have that name brand when it comes to that. But some of these guys, we've heard in playing college football on Saturdays, and some we haven't.
Mhm.
So this is just a nice mix of guys. We did fill out the need, and hopefully that these guys will can make an impact on this team, especially considering of the 2021 draft, where hopefully we'll get a lot more production from the draft players than we did in 2021. Hopefully, that's the plan.
Yeah, because the 2021 draft class, it had a lot of potential. I think we felt the same way about Jamin Davis, the way we did about Jahan Dotson the first night.
Mm-hmm.
Very questionable. I think this team passed up on a lot of guys that, even if, like, for example, N'Kobe Dean ended up going late to the Eagles, which I feel like that's somebody you could have taken a chance on in a later round.
Yeah.
He was projected a top pick. He was projected a first round pick, but rumor is he had some pec issues at the combine, so a lot of teams passed up on him. But again, just gotta wait and see. We have our reservations. I will say that I think this team did better in the late rounds.
Yeah.
Like if you could break up grade differently rounds 1 through 3 and then 4 through 7, I think 4 through 7 get a much better grade than 1 through 3 does.
Yeah. Definitely agree. And where they had more like the value, they were value picks. Like we always talk about this, especially in most drafts, but this draft probably more in particular where you really didn't have, like we always say, if you had a need for interior, offensive lineman, defensive lineman, if you needed guys or you just needed guys in the trenches, this was a perfect draft for you where you really had a lot of that depth and also wide receiver depth. So you look at those kind of the positions of need, as far as the position of depth of these teams. So, getting guys that slip through the cracks like this, especially Saturday, they were like very bargain deals. A lot of guys who I thought was probably going to get drafted probably Friday per se. Now we was able to kind of take advantage of and get. And then once again, that something about that Washington from Alabama to Washington connection is always something where, and I like those type of situations, especially when you get guys from a winning background,
Yeah.
especially from a guy like a Nick Saban. We know how like Jonathan Allen said in one of his interviews that's heard during the offseason was almost like it prepares you for for this next level. So this is one of those things where, NFL is pressure, but they deal with pressure every week. They go through a gauntlet just about every week, except for maybe the week before Auburn, when they may play like Georgia State. But for the most part, they have their games are always to the magnitude. They pretty much are on a pro level from start to finish. And Nick Saban doesn't, he definitely runs that Alabama machine to as if it's a final machine. And we see a lot of guys come from that system and become extremely successful in the NFL.
Yeah.
But how you feeling? I guess we're now 72 hours removed from Jahan Dotson pick. Your thoughts on Jahan?
I still think that it was kind of a panic pick. I think that it's hard to tell because something tells me that Ron Rivera liked this guy a lot more than he liked Chris Olave.
Yeah.
Because to trade back and only get a third and a fourth round for it, to pass on somebody that if you really loved, to only get a third and a fourth round pick kind of it confuses me a little bit. It doesn't sit right with me. But I think at the end of the day, he if he loved him and he went and got him, ultimately, we can. This could potentially end up being the steal of the first round.
Yeah,
being able to trade back, add some picks. It also could be, one of the worst draft trades we've made, and we've made some pretty bad draft trades. I.e., 2012. But he did put up really good numbers at Penn State. Even without a quarterback. Reminds me a lot of Terry McLaurin. Terry McLaurin's been doing the same thing for the last 3 years. Has played with 8 different quarterbacks and still putting up, tremendous numbers. And he's about to get hit. He's about to get paid. Curious to see what that's going to end up being. But just this past season, his senior year in 12 games, 91 catches, almost 1,200 yards, 12 touchdowns. Those are really solid numbers. And again, he did it basically without a quarterback.
Yeah.
He did the last 4 years basically without a quarterback. So I feel better about it than I did when we drafted him. I do still feel like it was a panic pick. I think that they anticipated somebody else being there that they could get. But again, they do want to give Carson Wentz every possible opportunity to be successful. You cannot, if and when Carson Wentz fails, you can't say that this team didn't put talent around him. They've surrounded him with talent. They've added receivers. They added another running back, which we'll get into in a minute. They're doing everything to help Carson Wentz be successful, to be a good quarterback again, to get that 2017 Carson Wentz back. And if they do, then, like Ron said, trading a third round pick for him, that's basically your third round pick that year. And to get a league MVP in the third round is still pretty good.
Yeah, and now adding that depth to wide receivers, that's definitely after losing DeAndre Carter. So you look at another guy that could potentially be more of a significant upgrade to him as well. I think he'll. And then also the beauty of it too, where we talked about like as far as the wide receiver schemes, like you might see all 4 of them on the field potentially. Even like we said, probably one of the biggest drawbacks is all the wide receivers that we have really that same physical generic makeup versus when we looked at a guy like a Drake. Well, we didn't say it's collective, but I know like one of the guys I was looking at was Drake London because of his speed, more so not his speed, but more so of his physical nature. Like he was the one that I looked at as I talked about on one of the shows. He can drop that 50-50 ball. Like if it's it's a jump ball in the air. I look at Drake London was a guy that I figured he would be the ones that would win a lot of those battles, those 50-50 battles, which coupled with other guys, coupled with like Terry, coupled with Curtis, Diami, like those type of those type of wide receivers would have been great for this offense because it's almost like it would be like a picky poison type of offense. Well, okay, do I want to get a guy like a Terry who can blow the top off the defense, or with Drake London is such a big target, do I double him? Because if I double him, hey, he might still catch it over the top because of his height. So it's just one of those things where even Drake London wasn't where he was at. He drafted 8. So I guess it's just one of those things where and Washington did the smart thing as far as trade down and actually get some assets for that, because obviously they weren't keen on Chris Olave, because if you could have pulled the trigger then, because I don't definitely, especially when you look at the team that they traded, their trade partner, which is the New Orleans Saints, they won't go up there to get a quarterback.
Right.
Like at first, initially we thought that was the case, but then they bring in like Chris Olave, which is definitely will help them going down the line. So yeah.
Yeah, I think
So
I think even if they might have had Chris Olave and Jahan Dotson 1A and 1B.
Yeah.
And just basically came down to in their eyes, they could have been the same receiver. We can add picks, in day 2 and day 3.
Yep.
To get basically the same guy, and it still would have worked, I guess. In their eyes, obviously, they said that they had a few different charts. They of course did the famous Jimmy Johnson chart, the draft value chart, and they feel good about it. And now it's up to Scott Turner to find a way to use him and get him the ball and make this team successful, make this offense successful.
Yeah, big time. So we definitely got to talk about now our Alabama guys. For Adrian Mathis, defensive tackle. Then also we drafted Brian Robinson Jr. out of Alabama as well, the running back. Your thoughts on the Bama guys?
I think I'm trying to think of his name. The D tackle we got.
Payne?
No. The one we just drafted.
Oh, you talking about Mathis? For Adrian Mathis? Yeah.
So I think that was not necessarily a panic pick, more of just a replacement pick.
Yeah.
They got somebody who they feel that they could plug and play, put in rotation with Deron Payne this season, because now that, it came out last week that we weren't going to re-sign Deron Payne anymore. So that's not to say he won't come back. He could still, when he enters the free agent market, we could still make a run at him. But I think they're really waiting to see what happens with Carson Wentz, because that $28.3 million that ate up a lot of the cap space we had this year, and I think that was the big reason why Ron Rivera and Martin Mayhew decided not to pursue a contract extension, because between Deron Payne and Terry McLaurin, you're going to re-sign Terry McLaurin. You have to. You cannot let that man go, for a 3rd round pick in next year's draft. You have to re-sign him. If you don't, the fan base, we're already irritated with this front office right now, the last 2 drafts. If you let Terry McLaurin go, that you're going to lose the fan base completely, and Ron Rivera might very well be fired at the end of the year. So that's number 1. Number 2, you're anticipating Deron Payne not re-signing, because these players have egos. So if you're gonna sit there and tell him beginning of the offseason, hey, our priority is to extend you, and then a few months later say, hey, we're not going to, because we just got Carson Wentz, we picked up his entire $28 million salary, plus we have to re-sign this other guy who's more valuable than you in our eyes. So you're gonna play this last year on your contract, and we'll see what happens from there. I don't think he's gonna re-sign, because that basically the team saying, hey, we don't value you as much as these other guys. So they had to go and replace him. I think the running back, I think that's going to be a very good trade or draft. I mean,
yeah,
one of 2 things is going to happen. Either Antonio Gibson is going to figure out his fumbling problem, and we're going to have 3 very, very good running backs in our running back room touching the ball, or he's going to outperform Antonio Gibson, and that's our new starting running back. It sucks because I just bought an Antonio Gibson jersey, but it is what it is. Antonio Gibson, the biggest problem with him is his injuries and holding onto the ball. Those are the two biggest issues. When he's healthy and he doesn't fumble, dude's a top 10 running back in the league. But those two things have costed us, especially in that first Dallas game. Antonio Gibson fumbling late in the game that potentially costed us the game, and that huge upset. So I do like it. I would have rather taken somebody like Kenneth Walker if they would have been available, but I don't think he was. I think both running backs, Breece Hall and Kenneth Walker, both got taken before we picked at 47. But I like it. I'm okay with them. And like you said, going to Bama, that prepares you. And also, he scored 4 touchdowns against Ole Miss. And everybody on this network knows how I feel about Ole Miss and the Titans and Spurs.
Yeah.
Any of those teams. Scored 4 touchdowns against Ole Miss, so I like him by default.
Yeah. Like you said, I think for Adrian Mathis, I think that was just a smart move. Just to get depth. So you look at, obviously, Tim Settle's gone, Matt Ioannidis is gone. So you kind of had to fill up that spot, especially considering the fact the multitude of injuries and other things that happened towards the end of that season, the back down of the season, where this defensive line was really a skeleton crew, and just as far as the thinness of the depth of this team. So you bring in a guy like him, and like we said, a lot of people think themselves, "Hey, this is maybe Cameron." I don't know why people want to call him Cameron Payne. I guess I'm thinking NBA, but Deron Payne. I don't know why I get those two confused. I don't understand why. But anyway, when you look at it from that standpoint, that another Alabama guy, so he, like you said, it fits that mold. It's a plug and play kind of guy. You can put him in as well. And then also Brian Robinson Jr. I think that's another one where you can really, especially as of late, probably within maybe the only person I think that I could think of as far as a Alabama running back that really didn't make it per se in the NFL was like Trent Richardson. But for the most part, he comes from a great pedigree. Obviously, he was in, you look at just the Alabama running backs as of late, who he's behind, guys like Najee Harris. This was his opportunity to shine. He balled out definitely against Cincinnati in the college football semifinal. So that's another thing too, where that defense was pretty stout as well. So he's another guy too that adds that depth to also Gibson, McKissick, those guys, and also maybe potential, Jared Patterson as well, as far as being in that depth of running backs. And I think he's another guy I think that can answer the call, power back. He's a guy I think, he's one of those guys I think that could definitely help move the chains, because that's what we need, especially when it comes to this type of offense. We know this is, as far as, a pass, somewhat happy offense potentially. And then you bring in a guy like him that can kind of help move those chains. Because we know how we are, especially when it comes to third down efficiency. We talked about this till we were blue in the face last year, as far as that's how you win football games, is that third down efficiency, even though it depends on how much you give up on defense and also how much you convert on offense. Those are kind of one of the big plays, especially for a team. We looked at those even in the beginning where, our 7-10 season could have been maybe in reverse if we would have took care of situations in the third quarter, on converting on third downs, which we talked about this all the time, where we'll look at those numbers, and the first thing that you see is almost like if we had a highlighter. I guarantee you that would have been kind of one of the two between time possession and this would have been the two things that have been highlighted in red ink, like as far as what we failed to do in 2020. But so I definitely think having that there as well, like we talked about, like theme is really, they took care of business as far as addressing their needs and actually addressing the depth. So I look at Phil Adrian and also Brian Robinson Jr. as two guys too that kind of fits that mold as well. So then we got a safety, Percy Butler. Your thoughts on Percy?
To be honest, I don't know a whole lot about him. I watched a little bit of his highlight tapes over the last couple of days. I like what I see. We need another safety. Cam Curl obviously can't do it by himself. I was upset that we let go of Landon Collins. Probably just another cap casualty. I'm already hearing talks that they might reach out to him and try to bring him back. Is that going to happen? I doubt it. The NFL is a big ego sport. Landon Collins is a big ego guy. He didn't even want to be called a linebacker. I highly doubt he's going to be okay with taking a massive pay cut to play a position that he doesn't really want to play. But it adds depth. We look at him like somebody like Jimmy Moreland, who came in and kind of provided rather quickly. Another person who I hated to see get released when he did. But it adds depth to the position. It adds speed. Maybe him and Cam Curl. Maybe Cam Curl can take him under his wing, kind of help develop him. And we really just, as long as if this front line, if this front four, front seven plays up to their expectations and plays as well as they can, I think he's really going to benefit and he's really going to ball out.
Yeah, I definitely think he's going to be a great contributor for this team. Like you said, thinking about Jeremy Moreland, Jimmy Moreland. That was, oh man, like when he, man, I'm gonna tell you, I remember when he got released, that was like, oh my gosh, like that was like really sad. Like it was kind of like I couldn't believe it happened, but it's just one of the things where you just look at just the, just this how it is. And but I look at just what Percy can do for this team potentially, like we talked about as far as adding that safety. He's another guy where I think he could be kind of one of those guys we could put him in multiple fronts. He could be a guy, especially adding the mix with Bobby McCain, Cam Curl. He'll definitely add some depth to that one. He'll also be, I think, a guy that's going to definitely help in special teams. Great hitter from what I've been seeing as far as reading his scouting report and a lot of just reports about his attributes, great speed and a great hitter. So that's kind of one of the things where, especially is good, especially considering the fact when, he'll be guarding potentially like, now I don't even want to really call them tight ends. They're literally damn near wide receivers at this point. At this point, especially in this past centric NFL that we live in now, where you're gonna have to go against tough tight ends across the board. So definitely a great pick. Actually, for going to a small school, Louisiana, Lafayette. So that's definitely good. They had the best school, but hey, we'll see. That's the thing too, where, and I always hate the fact of, do you judge a guy based on where he went to? But I like talent is talent. Yeah. I know we look at like the Alabamas, the Georgias, who, especially Georgia, who put up 15 guys, got drafted, 8 of them from the defense. You look at those type of numbers and you're like, schools matter, but it's sometimes it don't. Talent sometimes can leak out in these small places. So he's another guy too, where you think about a guy who went to Louisiana. I didn't go to Louisiana, Lafayette. Get ready to make that comparison, but actually he went to Louisiana. But yeah. So it's about that time. We gotta address the elephant in the freaking room. So in that 5th selection, there's a guy from the University of North Carolina, a quarterback, a guy who I thought was going to be.
I think you heard of him.
I've heard of the young man before. I think I even lamented about him this time last year being the number 1 overall pick in the 2020. Much to my chagrin, he was the first pick, but he was the first pick of the 5th round. So I was somewhat right, but it's just a different round. Your thoughts on Sam Howell coming to Washington?
I think I think in 2 years he's going to be our starting quarterback. I think he's going to. I think at some point this season he will overtake Taylor Heineke for that backup spot because he played. Was he a 4-year starter in North Carolina?
He was a 3-year starter because I don't think he. Hold up. I want to say he
was a
might
3-year
have.
starter.
Yeah, it was a 3-year starter because that's right. Because he's what 22. So yeah, he was a 3-year starter. Yeah, because I had to think about it for a sec. Because he should have. Well, I'll talk about that in a sec.
So he's a 3-year starter. Overall, throughout his career in North Carolina, 6'3", almost a 64% completion percentage, over 10,000 yards. I'm pretty sure there's a ghost in here. I'm gonna die today. It's okay though. If I die today, I ain't got to go to work tomorrow. 10,000 yards, 92 touchdowns. His career high was his freshman year, 38 touchdowns to 7 interceptions. Last season, 24 touchdowns and 9 interceptions, total 92 to 23, and a 164 and a 164.2 quarterback rating. Phenomenal numbers. Even this past season, he threw, just this past season alone, 3,056 yards, 24 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, rating of 154.2. And he lost his best receiver in De'Ami Brown, which we drafted last year. We all know.
Yep.
Jamal Williams, or was it Jamal Williams? Javonte Williams. I'm sorry, Javonte Williams. Drafted. I can't remember who drafted him. I was very high on Javonte. Oh, I think Denver did.
Yeah, in Denver.
I was the Commanders of the AFC.
Yep.
I was very high on Javonte Williams, and then he lost majority of his offensive line last year.
Yep.
So he's playing behind a brand new offensive line, new receivers, unproven receivers, and a new backfield, and he still put up very, very good numbers.
Yeah.
I think even Ron Rivera had mentioned that when you're looking at a guy, you look at the entirety of their career in college, which is what he did with Sam Howell. Because if you only base it off of this year, you see what happens.
Yep.
You fall drastically. Not every quarterback you draft is a Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers who can make household names out of Wes Welker, Julian Edelman, and EQ St. Brown. Like, not some quarterbacks need weapons. Is Sam Howell that quarterback? Probably. He needs weapons, which we have. One of which he knows very well in De'Ami Brown. I think give Carson Wentz 2 years. You're already paying him $28 million. Give him 2 years, see how this season goes. If it goes well, if it goes as well as my pocketbook hopes it goes, Carson Wentz will be the MVP of the league. I already put money on him winning MVP. Because it'd be a huge payday. But if he doesn't, you're already grooming the next guy to take over, which is what you want in a situation, is what the Packers were able to do. That's why they've had back-to-back Hall of Fame quarterbacks. You still had a Hall of Fame quarterback still playing. You went and got Aaron Rodgers. A couple of years ago, you still have Aaron Rodgers. You went and got Jordan Love. Of course, Jordan Love isn't Aaron Rodgers. Jordan Love is more of a project quarterback. But you're still prepping for the future, for when you no longer have your guy. That's what this front office did, and I love it. Getting Sam Howell in the 5th round, when there were still talks, even up until Thursday night, of Sam Howell still being, picked in the late 20s, maybe early second day. Getting him in the 5th round is I believe going to be ended up being the steal of the draft. And if everything plays out right, he will end up being the Tom Brady of this draft
class. Yeah, so it's funny. It was one of those things where with Saturday, I'm like, look, I'm not leaving. I literally was like, look, I'm gonna barricade myself in this house until Sam Howell gets drafted. So When the call was when it was made, when one of our season ticket holders, one of our people said Sam Howell, University of North Carolina, I literally think my neighbors heard me audible as if the Washington Commanders won the Super Bowl. This is one of those picks, definitely with me. I'm a University of North Carolina guy, unabashedly. To get a guy like a Sam Howell, I think is great. And like Ron Vera said, I think if he was eligible to come out in 2020, he would have been one of those guys being picked in the first round. I guarantee you it. Just the season that he had I call it almost a Heisman-esque type of season potentially. The thing, like you said, him losing those guys, De'Ami, Dez Newsome, Michael Carter, Javonte Williams, you lose that, and also your offensive line, and then you coming in with those heightened expectations of, preseason ranked top 9th in the country. And even with that, Sam still had a resolve about him that even in those games, you didn't see a quit in them. Like he tried to find ways to actually win those ball games. And, he's definitely not going to have those type of deficiencies going forward with the league. You're going to at least have some guys, you're going to have some professionals that get a check. So it's not, you're going to have guys that's going to have effort behind you. He's a guy, I think he's a leader as well. He'll be a guy I think could no pun intended, but he can command the locker room eventually for this franchise. And I even like what Ron was saying, even during the presser, like as far as they were looking at, obviously looking at guys at UNC Pro Day last year, and Sam was out there throwing the football with them. So that's another thing too, where they say a lot of guys don't do that, but that shows you the kind of character, the kind of person that you want on the team. Especially for him, it really didn't benefit him to actually even be out there. Like, it's their moment. It's like he didn't have to be there. He could have been somewhere else doing that, but he wanted to help those guys, and that just lets you know, hey, and those type of things, those type of deeds don't go unnoticed. So bringing that up was kind of one of the things I looked at, like, wow, I think that should be something that we all should look at as far as, when certain things, doing things, even though it may not mean nothing for you today, but it can provide great dividends for you going forward. And I think this is a perfect situation for him, where he'll be able to sit behind a guy like a Carson Wentz and be a sponge, and also the Taylor Heineke as well, because he has a Taylor Heineke type of disposition with him in a weird way. They kind of remind me a lot, but obviously I think when we look at Sam, it's more of a physical. He won the genetics lottery more so than a Taylor Heineke, more so than anything. Those guys. So that'd be a nice quarterback room for him to learn. And I think that's the beauty thing about these quarterbacks this year as well, where I think a lot of these guys will have the opportunity to have great mentorships. I mean, you look at even though I talk about outside of Washington, you look at like Kenny Pickett. I think he'll be a good quarterback under the tutelage of my other. I hate to bring up another UNC guy, Mitchell Joe Montana Trubisky. So you get that. Also, you look at Malik Willis, Ryan Tannehill will be a great mentor for him. Desmond Ridder be Marcus Mariota be a great mentor for him as well. So the same thing go for here, where Carson and Taylor could be a great mentor for him going down the line. So I definitely think, like you said, I think timeline probably about two years. I can see him being a starter, and I think he could be a guy that I think people, and I think a lot of fans are gonna like him as well. I think, like we always say, who's the most popular player on the team, in the city? The president and the backup quarterback of the Washington Commanders are by far the two most popular people in Washington, D.C. So I look at that, and then just, hey, I'm so ready to get my number 14 jersey. I found out his number today. I was like, oh, boy. And I'm going to tell you one thing. That Madden 23 gonna hit different when you got that Howell to Power connection. The boy about to be a wide receiver. The boy coming out, man. This guy.
I like it. The how to pot connection. I like it.
Yo, that's going to happen. That is going to. I'm literally. This is probably the first time, maybe like 4 or 5 years. I'm actually going to buy Madden the first day it comes out. Especially with a new name. Now Sam Howell was like, boy, oh boy, like that connection gonna hit different in Madden. Yeah, I can't wait. But I'm getting my 14 jersey.
Season, I'm excited for this season, though.
Yeah, I'm getting that number 14 jersey. Oh boy,
my last two Washington jerseys. What players have died? I'm officially retired from buying jerseys.
Oh yes, God, bro. Oh my God, I didn't even really think about that. So now because you got Sean T, Dwayne Haskins. I got Colt Brennan.
Oh,
so I got a Colt Brennan jersey, and
but Colt Brennan wasn't murdered though.
Well, no, yes, right, because both. Oh Lord, I didn't even think about it like that.
Both killed.
And you know what? And the first thing I thought about Sam Howell is that Colt Brennan appearance in preseason. I think he's going to be great. Like I think people going to love Sam Howell, especially in the preseason. He's going to be almost how like Colt Brennan was in the Hall of Fame game against the Colts in 2008.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be that type of buzz, that type of, but oh my God, I didn't even think about that, Cruz. Oh my God, that is so freaking scary, dog. That's scary. That's scary as hell. And we were literally just talking about that maybe like in the middle of the season. You were saying how you weren't going to get jerseys. And I did not think for the, and it never hit me. We talked the day of what happened, but I totally forgot that you had his jersey. Oh my God, that is scary.
Yep.
Oh my God. Whew. That's crazy.
That's probably why this team has sucked since 1992.
Don't say it like that. No, don't blame your existence.
I feel that was the last time we won a Super Bowl, 1992. 8 months later, I was born. It's all making sense now.
No, it was other things.
Let me go hop over and be a Dallas fan. They can continue their misery.
Exactly. Ooh-wee. Yeah, that'd be 7-10 forever.
And I'll be happy every single year.
Exactly. But yeah. So you know what? But there's other factors. That's why. Trust me, they were still a pretty good team even after your birth. But we had a different owner back then, but we'll talk about that for another podcast. Maybe.
Yeah, we definitely do need to talk about that though, because that's
real. Keep it in the family. Keep it in the family. They said keep it in the family. And what y'all did? Nope. And look where we at now.
Look where we're at.
So I got our another fifth round pick, Cole Turner, the tight end.
I like Cole Turner. I think he's going to end up being able to come in and contribute pretty early because I don't know if Logan Thomas is going to be able to play all 17 games. Yeah. We still have Sammy Reyes, which he's essentially still learning the game. Yeah. Being a player from Chile and never really played a lot of organized football, so he's still really learning. I don't know. I don't think we have any other real valuable tight ends outside of that. I think they let go of Jeremy Sprinkle, which is good. I think Cole Turner's going to be able to come in. He's going to be able to contribute, and also learn the game at a fast pace. He's going to have to, because if Logan Thomas has the same injury issues that he had last year, Cole Turner's going to end up being that number 2 guy, and he's going to have to pick up the slack and basically take over for Logan Thomas.
Yeah. And that's the thing where you just look at it, that's another guy, great mode, 6'6". He's, so I think that's definitely another one too, where this, yeah. And, it's kind of tricky because, like, I looked at a guy, like, we talked about John Bates, who was our rookie of the year.
I forgot about John Bates.
Rookie of the year. Yeah. So you look at that, and also they just has, like you said, that depth. Ricky Seals-Jones is gone. I think he went to the Giants. If my memory serves correct, he went somewhere. I forgot where did he go.
I don't.
But Ricky Seals-Jones is out. So, like you said, Logan probably not going to be able to play, especially in the beginning, because he got hurt. God, he got hurt in December? He got hurt. I forgot what game, but he just got hurt in December. So, like you said, him being back, I don't expect him to be back before the start of the season. So I think that's really interesting. So, probably the most famous name in a draft, well, not one of the most famous name of our, except for Sam Howell, but as far as a name, Chris Paul out of Tulsa. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he adds depth to the offensive line, which is a huge need for us with Brandon Sheriff leaving a free agency, going over to Jacksonville. We needed to add depth. We needed to add a lot more bodies, and I think he's going to be a good plug and play. I think he can play. I think he has played while he was at Tulsa. Multiple positions on the line. But big body in the middle. That's basically what we needed. And again, the biggest thing is depth. At that point, you're drafting, I think, 7th round. You're just adding depth at that point. Yeah. Hoping that one of these guys turns out to be, a Pro Bowler at least, all pro, best case scenario.
Yeah. And actually, Chris Paul, he actually had the opportunity to interview him during the NFL scouting combine. So it's funny now. I see some of these guys that I talked with, they are now part of the Commanders and just part of teams. I just found it very interesting. He was the one that kind of stood out as well to me. He was really. Because I asked him like one of the questions as far as like who do he emulate his game after, but he kind of talk about he necessarily doesn't emulate a particular player, but it's certain attributes of certain players that he emulates his game. So I definitely thought that was a kind of an interesting response to it, which I think is a good thing. Where a lot of people they say they emulate one particular person, but he's like a hybrid of his development or more so of his makeup. 6'4", 323 pounds. He's a big guy. He was another one where I think it was kind of cool to hear Ron Rivera call. And I think all these guys, I thought it was also, it's definitely, I forgot to mention like Adrian Mathis, where it was like they was on the phone forever. Like they were just cheering. He's like, we'll just call you back. And are you there? So I thought that was kind of cool. Also, the Chris Paul exchange, I think, was also great as well. And it's crazy to think when we talk about Chris Paul and this guy, he doesn't have the best footwork, but I think that's going to be a situation where I think that's going to definitely help. I think definitely our offensive line coach has been definitely instrumental as far as developing young offensive tackles. So I look at those, he'll be able to help him with his footwork. And you think to yourself, Chris Paul and footwork goes hand in hand, especially from a basketball standpoint. But this is, as his Twitter handler is Big Chris Paul. So this is
not a little bit bigger than the Chris Paul that we all know.
Right, not the insurance salesman. Might be related to Chris and Cliff, but but. And then round out our draft, Christian Holmes, the cornerback. Any thoughts on our cornerback?
Another position that we needed to build some depth in. One position that struggled very mightily last year. Kendall Fuller was probably the bright spot, and even he struggled at times. We all know how I feel about William Jackson III.
Number 8. He changed his number.
Good. He needs to change his team. But it's crazy to me that the Bengals let him go because they had Eli Apple,
Oh,
and they're
Jesus.
basically the same player. They both suck. They're both trash at their
Oh
jobs.
my God. It just makes you up like, oh my God. Like, oh, Odell, if he wouldn't have got hurt. And I'm like, oh my
Oh yeah.
gosh. Oh, I was like, y'all got rid of this man for him. I was like, whoa. And, you know, it's funny when you say that. I really thought about them in the Super Bowl. I'm like, y'all really thought getting rid of William Jackson was like a downgrade for y'all. Like, I'm like, oh, and then you bring in Eli Apple. He got, oh my gosh, he got torched. I felt so bad for Eli Apple, even though he used to be a former Giant. And I'm like, yo, I felt bad for this dude.
But yeah, again, just needed to add depth. Somebody to come in and compete for maybe that slot corner
Yeah,
or number 3 corner on the outside.
yeah,
Somebody with speed. Just again, late rounds, you're looking for depth. You're not looking for a day one starter.
yeah,
Ends up being cool, without injuries. Some of you guys might end up being day one starters because of injuries during
yeah,
training camp,
yeah,
but that's not what you're looking for. You're looking to add depth. You're looking to add um, bodies to your roster to help maybe push those guys that are kind of on the fringe
yeah,
of maybe not making the roster this year. And you never know. He could come out and surprise us and be that day one starter.
yeah. He definitely
But
can.
you never know.
Yeah. Great physical makeup, 5'11". Got a 39-inch vert. I think that was pretty good. That's a kind of a one of the things I look at just as far as the numbers and just the tape. A 4.5 40. So I think that's pretty solid for a cornerback, especially in these day and age. So I definitely think that was also, like you said, another solid pick. It's just gonna but just more so in this point, like you said, in 7th round, you're just trying to acquire depth. Yeah, you just want to this is kind of one of the things where you're just kicking tires on guys just to see, hey, will this guy make this team? Will he be a part of the depth chart? Like, will he make the final 53-man roster? Like, you want to look at those type of situations when you got that. But yeah, this has been this was a very solid draft. Definitely, we thought we would come in and talk about 6 guys, and now it's 8. So, it's just one of the things where you look at just another somewhat of a solid draft. What grade do you give this team?
I give overall, I give him a B minus.
Okay.
I still think we reached on Jahan Dotson
Yeah.
and Mathis.
Yeah.
I think the Robinson draft was a good draft. I just think we could have went somewhere else. I'm very disappointed that we didn't draft a linebacker at all. I think that was a bigger need for us than wide receiver was.
Yeah.
Our linebacking core is right now, as far as they played last year, god awful. Jamin Davis
Hmm.
is not the first round pick, the 19th overall pick that we spent on him. Um, Cole Holcomb was playing well towards the end. He put us in a really good position to win that Dallas game. But altogether, our linebacking core is struggling, and so we just need to. I was really surprised, very disappointed that we didn't address that position at all, whether free agency or in the draft. Maybe Landon Collins can come back and officially sign as a linebacker, or we could look at somebody's cap casualty in a couple weeks that has to be let go because of cap issues, which I don't see too many. I think most of the teams that were really in cap hell got rid of a lot of their guys and they got it figured out. So I think overall B minus. I really like the day three draft. Sam Howell in the 5th. I think Chris Bryant is going to be good in the long term. Again, like I said, if we can split up the rounds 1 through 3, I'll give 1 through 3 probably a C plus, and I'll give Sunday 4 through 7 a definite A.
Yeah. I want to just. I think in theory, I think they get a C from me. I just think for the simple fact of, hey, they did fill the needs, like you said, for the exceptional linebacker. Like you said, it was a lot of, that was another one where I think they could have got somebody. Like that could have been, especially like you said, especially considering the fact that Cole is this final year. It's kind of one of the things where, hey, it might be a little bit easier to potentially get rid of him if you find a guy that you could definitely help, fill that void if he was to leave or test a free agency or do what he had to do. But they did feel like we talked about the positions that I think that they need is definitely from a depth standpoint. I was definitely hoping that a corner was going to be our way. Like I did a few mock drafts during the week, and some of these guys were leaving, like Darryl Stingley and Sauce Gardner off until 11. I'm like, if this happens, we celebrate in the streets in Pennsylvania Avenue. If this was the kind of come to fruition, but boy, it did not play out the way I thought it was. But still, I did like the fact that they did trade to get some more draft capital, because the team needed more than those 6 picks to kind of fill those needs. And like you said, hopefully we can strike it rich in the in the second tier of free agency potentially, where some guys will probably see what's out there in that secondary market as far as free agent wise. So hopefully that comes to fruition. But as far as from this draft concern, I say C, and because a lot of it too, like I talked about it earlier, there really isn't a sexy name per se. Like, we talk about, other guys have been picked, especially like our NFC East counterparts. They got guys who I think were like name brands, especially when it comes to the college football. Obviously, the Giants getting Kayvon Thibodeau. Also, the Eagles getting who they end up getting? They end up getting the kid from Georgia, Jordan Davis.
Jordan Davis.
And Jordan Davis and Nakobe Dean, and Nakobe Dean, well, like I talked about a lot on a couple podcasts I've been on this week. He was literally like that. If there was a household name in Athens, Georgia, Nakobe Dean was, people knew him in Athens, Georgia, in every household in that area. So you look at those, we didn't necessarily have, I think, like you said, the sexiest name probably was Sam Howell, and then also Chris Paul, just due to the fact of the NBA Chris Paul. So we and I think that's the kind of the beauty of this team as well too. I think they really never. That's the thing about these past drafts, especially in the Ron Rivera era. We never had like a quote unquote sexy name, like a guy that was in, especially when it comes to the college football, like as far as name brand types, like as far as the ones you'll hear every Saturday. So, and I think I still see a C, and I give them a C for this draft. But like you said, I'm really, really excited for this season once again. Definitely looking forward to it, and I got some great stuff coming down the line. We're about to hit 1 year. We're about 6 weeks away on June 11th. We're hitting a year since we've did the. At this point, it's the Washington Football Guys, and we talked about it. It'll probably be the last episode of the Washington Football Guys. We'll have a new name. So head over to our Twitter page and vote. I think we got, a week left, about 6 days and some change to have that name. And we'll take another brief sabbatical, but then we'll be right back. And we'll be, getting you ready for that. And then we got schedule release coming out a week from Thursday, which I'm looking forward to it, because I've had like certain places I want to go to. Now I can kind of put those days in motion, book some flights. Hey, maybe I'm thinking about Houston, thinking about going to Detroit. I think Detroit probably the best as far as bargain wise, what I can afford, and be, it's Detroit. Well, Detroit, the tickets will probably be dirt cheap, and I probably can get a bang for my buck if I go to Ford Field. But I cannot wait for the schedule release as well. Like, so much to talk about when it comes to schedule release.
Yeah.
we're gonna be on Amazon. Is Herbie and Herbie is Herbie and Al Michaels gonna call our game? Troy, Joe can call us on ESPN.
Yep. There's gonna be
Mike Tirico and
to
the
unpack.
boys.
There'll be a lot to
Yeah.
unpack that day. You guys start because that was one of the big things when our schedule got released last year. We were excited for the dates, but we saw the gauntlet we were going through at the end of the season, the 5 straight divisional
Yeah.
games,
Yep.
and we knew that was going to be, that was going to make or break our season, which we saw how that went.
Yeah. So I cannot wait. I'm definitely looking for a lot of situations. Ron Vera comes back to Chicago, so that's another one. And like I talked about Detroit. When is the week that I'm gonna have to bring my my mouth guards because you're not biting my kneecaps at all. You ain't biting our kneecaps. We come in there. We're gonna bite y'all kneecaps, Detroit. So it's gonna be fun. I cannot wait for the schedule release. Like it's another one where I can talk about another podcast I was on earlier today. The NFL is the ultimate reality television show when it comes to these type of things. Like,
oh yeah,
they leave you wanting more. Like it's so crazy. You think about a draft as a 3-day event, and then what they do, they plug the schedule release. Then the international games being released on I think Wednesday. So that's another thing too, where I was like, man, I'm telling you, like the NFL knocks it out the park. They swing and do not miss. They hit home runs every single time. Like,
yeah, that's one thing Roger Goodell was really good at. Paul Tagliabue kind of started it.
yep.
Before Roger Goodell took over, is they make an NFL a year-long news cycle.
Yes.
And that's not even including the scandals. Just from the end of the season, training to the draft, then you go into spring training, then you have the owner meetings, and then training camp. They just plan everything out to where you're always talking about the NFL.
Yep. And the only really dry period is probably, and then this is where the crazy thing happened. Then you got OTAs coming up. That's coming up right, after probably in the next few weeks. You got rookie minicamps this week. A lot of teams will be doing OTAs at the end of May, like around Memorial Day. Then they got the mandatory camp like the first and second week of June. And then that's that 6-week period between about probably mid to late June to like the end of July. It's that dead period. And that's when the scandals happen. When we say an idle mind is the devil's playground. And within that 6-week period, you are always going to have some kind of situation that happens. In that 6-week period, you can literally guarantee, like Charles Barkley said, I guarantee it's going to be some type of headlining, head-turning, knucklehead stuff that's going to transpire in that 6-month period where they're done with the mandatory camp, and then you come back at the end of July for training camp. It always happens. So, like you said, it never ends. It never ends.
Yep. Especially when you're a Commanders fan.
Yes, and that's another thing too. With our scandal that's going on, that's another thing where a lot of stuff is going to be uncovered in these next few months, few weeks, few days potentially. So it's just one of the things where it never stops. NFL season never stops. It's always a constant something. But yeah. So let's put a bow on the final episode of the Washington Football Guys. Rob, final thoughts, social media plug, what you got going on?
You already know where you can find me, FNC Pod on Twitter, Football and Show Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. Like Coach said, we're going to take another short hiatus. Go check out our Twitter page at WF Guys. We do have the poll up for our new name. We put up 2 options. If you have a different option, like our network has been in the group chat, a lot of different options, put it down there. Let us know what you guys think. I probably won't be very active for the next couple of months. I'm getting ready to start the process of moving back down to beautiful San Diego, which I cannot wait because it has been cloudy as hell all day here. Can't wait to be in the sun again. But I'll be down there right before the season starts, so we'll definitely be ready to go for the season.
Yeah. Good old San Diego. Wow. Regardless of what's going on in life, the sun will always shine the next day. Oh boy. Must be nice.
It is.
Oh boy. Good old San Diego. So yeah, so at Facebook, so yes, definitely check us out on Facebook page, also Twitter, like you said, YouTube page as well. And we'll announce the new name in the coming whenever the poll results and whatever we decide what's appropriate. Then from there we'll go full speed ahead with whatever we name this podcast, the Washington Football Guys. This is the final episode of it, but you'll still be able to hear our content because we'll still be on Apple, Spotify. We're just changing the name. That's all we're doing. It's the same house, but we just changing the colors of the wall of the paint. That's all. So that's all. That's it. It's the way. It's no leaving. We're still in the same house, just a different coat of paint, and nothing different. It's gonna be us, but in a different name, and a little bit more of a give us a little bit more of a better brand identity, especially now with the change of the name. This is kind of like the placeholder. It's almost let's just like how our team has been. We had that, we had somewhat of a generic name, but now since we do have a name, now we have an identity that we so richly wanted it from since July of 2020, but we got it. So, with that being said, yeah, man, definitely another great show. Definitely looking forward to this new era of the Washington Football Guys podcast as we transition to our new name, and also on the verge of celebrating our 1-year anniversary of this podcast. And definitely appreciate everybody for their support during the transition. So that being said, man, this has been the final episode of the Washington Football Guys podcast. And we'll see you with a different name, the same wall, but a different coat of paint. We'll catch you on the next episode.